Hey there. I'm excited to announce this to you today. This is what you've been waiting for in your spiritual quest. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm finally ready to announce it that it's ready to go. It's the Grief to Growth Community Circle. Now, this is a sanctuary where like-minded souls are united in their journey through grief and towards personal transformation. It's more than just a place. It's a beginning. It's a commitment to growth and understanding. Here you're finding not just a community, but you're entering a circle of trust and depth. You're going to engage with interactive coursework. You'll dive into exclusive podcast episodes and partake in discussions that illuminate the path from mourning to empowerment. This is a realm where every question is honored and every individual's journey is validated. To be part of this exclusive circle, visit us at grieftogrowth.com/community or look for the chat icon at the bottom of every page on the main website. Remember that entry is a privilege because I want to ensure that every member is as dedicated and genuine as you are. You must apply to join, but the journey within is worth every step. So go ahead and join us today. Check it out, grieftogrowth.com/community, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Hi there. Welcome to Grief to Growth podcast. Your host is Brian Smith, spiritual seeker, best-selling author, grief survivor, and life coach. Brian believes that the worst tragedies of life provide the greatest opportunity for growth. Brian says he was planted, not buried, and he is here to help you grow where you've been planted by the difficulties in life. In each episode, Brian and his guests will share what has helped them to survive and thrive. It is his sincere hope this episode helps you today.
This is part 3 of my interview with Alba Monn. And as you found out, if you listen to parts 1 and 2, and if you haven't, I suggest you do, Alba had an incredible experience, a shared death experience with her daughter, Aurelia, who taught her a lot about life in a very short amount of time. So in this part, what we tried to do is go back and fill in some of the things that you might have had questions from on the first 2 parts, and also to explain a little bit more about the dreams that Alba had. And I got to ask her some more detailed questions as we got into this third part. So I hope you enjoy.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. This is Brian Smith back with another episode of Grief to Growth. And today I've got a follow-up interview with Alba Monn. And I want you to go back and listen to the interview I did with her recently, where she talked about her joint near-death experience or shared death experience with her daughter, Aurelia, who died during childbirth. And it was a really amazing experience. Alba had some precognitive dreams where she knew this was going to happen, or had dreams that kind of envisioned it beforehand, and learned some really valuable lessons in her NDE. And her NDE was so detailed and so rich that we actually ran out of time. So I'm having her back today to tell me a little bit more about the premonitions she had and to fill in some of the gaps make sure you go back and listen to that, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But with that, I want to welcome back again to Grief to Growth, Alba Monn.
Hello, everyone. Brian, thank you for having me.
Yeah, Alba.
I'm happy to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for being back. And as I was saying in the intro, your experience was so rich, and I was so enwrapped and so fascinated listening to it. I didn't get a chance to ask you many questions, but you wanted to fill in some gaps about some of the precognitive dreams you had, or some of the premonitions you had. And then I want to ask you some more questions just to fill in some of the gaps.
Yeah. Well, I described 3 of my premonition dreams in my book, Proof of Eternity. But actually it started at around the age of 12 years when I was swimming with a friend during summertime, and she and I were talking about what ideas we had for our future. And she mentioned that she would like to have children when she was old enough to have them. And she asked me what I thought about that, if I wanted to have children later on. And I said yes, but definitely not, a single child. I would like to have 2 or 3. And for some reason, I had this distinct feeling that one of my children would die at some point. And it was such a strange thought and such a weird feeling of being absolutely sure about that was going to happen in my life at some point in the future, that at the age of 12, I just decided I must find a solution for this problem. And my first solution was, well, I would try to get around that. And I had this idea, well, I wouldn't have any children, so I wouldn't have to, get in trouble with this whole topic. And I would just put it aside and live my life without any of those problems. Mm-hmm. And the second thought that I had was, well, if I decided to have children, then I would definitely not have just one, because with this strange feeling that one of my children would be dying while I was still alive, I didn't want to run this risk of just having a horrible experience with just one child. So I decided that would be kind of a, emergency situation. I would just try to make sure it wouldn't be that bad. But I forgot about it pretty soon. I didn't think about it that much. And it was just a very strange, feeling. And I actually wasn't interested in that at all. When I was 17, I did a lot of paintings. And one of the paintings, I decided I want to make a painting about my life, like about my future life. Mm-hmm. And I didn't plan anything about it. I just put some colors together, and out of nothing, I painted different people standing at one side of this picture. And it was sure that they had distinct features. So I had this feeling that they were real people, but I had no idea who it was. And there were two of them at one side, and then there was a little gap. And then there were the ones on the other side. And I had no idea why there was a gap between them. But I found this painting after my daughter had died, and it was a real shock to me to find it, because I could see the personal features of all of my children that were alive. At that time, I saw that, I could recognize all of my children on this picture. And I even saw that there was this little gap between my second and my fourth child, where my third child should stand, where Aurelia should stand, and there was nothing. So there was a little place for her, a space left, so that she wasn't forgotten, but she wasn't among my children that were alive. And this was really, it shattered me to see that I had some foresight at the age of 17 without any idea what it actually meant. And I remember that one of my friends asked me who these people were that occurred in this painting. And I said, I have no idea. And I think it's, nice people. I had this impression that it was holy people that were praying for me. That was my impression at the time. I had no idea why they would pray for me, or, what they would pray for. I just knew that they meant well for me, and that they were nice people, and I was glad to have them on this picture about my life. But I had no idea that this would be my children. So this was very remarkable at the age of 17. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning, at around 20, I had another premonition, but it was like a flashback. I saw the line of my life, and it looked a little bit like a DNA. It was twisted and turned, but it was a kind of a line that was in motion. And there were three red dots, big red dots on the three different spots on my line of life. And I realized that, where I had already a child born at that time. So my first child was one of those dots, and I saw two other dots in the future. And I realized that this meant that I would have 3 children. And I saw at what age they would be born, which seemed strange at the time, because there was no logic behind it. And I asked myself why I would, have them born in this pattern. It seemed kind of strange, but later on, I realized that this is exactly the years that they were born. I just saw them in the right place at the right age in my life. And I knew that out of these 3 children, there was one son, and I had a son already at that time. I knew that one of them was a son, one of them was a daughter, but I couldn't tell anything about the third one. And I knew that two of them in the future, when they were grown up, I knew in what direction they would, go to work and live later on. So I had this idea that one of them was in the west of where I'm living, and one of them was going to study a little bit of the east side of where I was at. But about the third child, I couldn't tell anything. And I was trying to grasp, where is this child? Where is it going to live at that time when the others are already out of our household and already grown up and studying somewhere else? And I couldn't even tell if it was a boy or a girl. I didn't know anything about this third child. And I realized that this meant that this child is the one who is going to die. And I had no idea which one of those three it would, it would be. So it actually was a pretty stressful situation for me to be confronted with this kind of facts and not being able to, to put it in a time frame or put it in a logical mindset. If it was my first child, my second, or my third, this was a little bit stressful for me at the time. But I didn't think much about it anymore. I had a lot to do at that time. I was still studying, so there was a lot on my mind, and I didn't really think about it for a long time. I just forgot about it. And the year after that, or maybe the second year after that, about 8 years before Aurelia would be born and dead, I had this very strange dream that shook me to my core. I remember I woke up in the morning and I had this idea that this was such an outstanding dream of such importance that I have to make sure that I don't forget any little detail about it. And so I went downstairs and I wrote it down on a piece of paper, and actually was several pieces of paper because it was a long dream. But I realized that it had a meaning for the future, for my life, but I couldn't understand anything because I couldn't relate it to my life at that point. But I knew it would be very important in the future, and I would want to get back to it. And this dream was when I found it already after Aurelia had been born. When I found it, this was the most revealing thing that ever happened to me, except for my near-death experience. Because looking back from that point in my future, I understood every little detail that was in this dream. It showed me the emergency operation. It showed me the grief. It showed me the recovery from the grief, the physical recovery from the grief, the emotional recovery from the grief, the philosophical recovery from the grief. And it told me, for instance, it was so specific. It was mind-blowing at the time. When I found it, I was, at the one hand, I was relieved because I realized that this meant that all of it was already planned in a way that was so specific that it was appalling to me at the time when I found it. And there was two angels in it. One angel was mentioned during my pregnancy. So before Aurelia was born, there was already an angel touching my belly, it said. And the explanation was right in the next line, saying that this angel was trying to warn me and to console me both at the same time. And when I read that, it was so emotional. Everything meant a connection to reality. And this was unbelievable to read it. And there was another angel at the end of the dream that healed me. And again, it was such a unbelievable thing to hear or read, that there was at the beginning of the dream a wound in my belly, like the cesarean section. It was the size of a fist, and it was just in the middle of my belly, and you could see through me. So this meant that there was a big wound that would tear my whole life apart, actually. It was such amazing details that all meant one part or the other of the little details that came to life in reality later on.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found a dream, among other stuff, that I had put aside since my student years. So this was a dream that I was shocked at when I had it, but I didn't think about it for years, nearly a decade, until I found it again. And there were two other dreams that I had that were very specific about the pregnancy and the birth. And one of them was recurring. So it recurred every week. And
Mm-hmm.
it showed me the way that my baby would be born, that, that she wasn't able to live a long life, but that she was too weak to actually live on, and that she had to be cared for by other people, that she would be taken from me, that I wouldn't know the people who would take her, and that I would get her back when she was not alive anymore. So that was actually also the truth. At the time when I had her for the first time, when I was embracing her for the first time, she was already dead for a week, and I had to, wait until I was released from the hospital. And that's when I saw her for the first time. And in my dream, it was a little package that had been sent to me so that I would get her back, because my deepest urge was to get back together with her and find her. And I got her to my name, to my address, and she was already not alive anymore at that point, and everything was in this dream. But unfortunately, I didn't understand it, and I was talking about it with other people, with friends, but nobody could explain any of these details, For instance, my child was very small at the time in the dream, whereas she was already like in the 5th or 6th month, and she was a lot bigger than she appeared in this dream, and nobody could give me any explanation of what this was supposed to mean.
Right.
And then there was a very peaceful dream that was the last dream that I had. It showed details of her funeral, and very beautiful details. One of the details was that my mom took all her flower buds in her garden and went to the grave at the day that the funeral was supposed to happen. And with 2 heavy baskets, she went to the cemetery all by herself, not telling anyone about it, not even me and my husband. And at the moment when I was standing next to the grave, and I saw that her little coffin was layered down so that she would rest on the ground, and at that moment when I saw all these flowers and she was resting on a bed of flowers, I was really touched, because of course I remembered my dream and the sequence in my dream where she was actually really laying down on a bed of flowers. And it was unbelievable to have this memory and to know that I had never told my mom, I had never told my husband, because by that time he was already fed up with anything that was a dream that I had. So I didn't tell him about this dream, and I didn't tell my family, because I didn't want to make anyone upset. And so it was really touching that so many of those details actually happened in reality later on.
Yeah. Well, and for people that are listening, if you want more details about the 3 most recent dreams, Alba did mention those in our first interview. And it's incredible to me, Alba, that this kept coming back to you over and over again, as you said, from the time you were like 12 years old. So I have 2 questions for you. The first is, what do you think the purpose is of these premonitions? And secondly, do you think that our lives are planned, or were these just possibilities that you were seeing?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, something I want to tell you about today. My podcast platform, Buzzsprout, has recently made it easier for me to allow you to support me financially. Go to www.grieftogrowth.com/subscribe. That's grief2growth.com/subscribe. And once you're there, you can sign up to support me financially. Now, you can do it for as little as $3 a month, or of course, as much as you'd like. If you do that, you'll get access to bonus episodes, and you'll see those in the regular feed. They'll have a lock on them. But when you become a subscriber, you'll actually get access to your own private feed, and you'll be able to listen to the regular podcast along with the bonus podcast for the subscribers. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for sharing the podcast. And I want to thank those of you who support me financially. Have a great day, and on to the episode.
No, I don't think it was just possibilities. To me, actually, in hindsight, all these premonitions were a huge help to accept my fate, because it was a very difficult time for my whole family. And I felt blessed to have had all those premonitions that obviously seemed to prepare me for that huge loss in the future. And I think it was just something that was given to me because obviously I have an ability to intuitively look a little bit behind the veil or to the other side, as it also happened in my near-death experience. And I don't know why that is, but to me, it was a huge help. And even though it was kind of not really easy to explain when all these premonitions took place, later on, I realized that they were given me to help me and to prepare me for what was going to happen in the future. And I don't think it was only possibilities. I have been thinking about how much was already, unchangeable in the future. I tried to figure out what my near-death experience meant, because in my own opinion, I think my child had free will either to come back and give us some more time and try to heal this whole situation that was unbelievable for both of us, my husband and me. Nobody really understood what was going on, why our child was taken to another clinic, what really happened to her or to me. My husband had heard that we were still in life danger, but I had no idea about it. And I think this was kind of a bonus time that my daughter was actually given out of her own decision, out of her own free will. And I think she was able to see into the future and see those possibilities, the bad ones, if she wouldn't come back, all this crisis and conflicts that my husband and I would have to face without her help. And even me being in a situation after an emergency operation and still bleeding internally, still being in this process of dying, if she would not have come back and bought a little bit of time so that we could connect to each other, because she was obviously trying to reach out to me, because I was in a way the only person that could change anything about it, because my husband actually didn't blame me for anything, but I was blaming him. So actually I was the only person that she had to reach to change the situation. And she did. And I think that's a bonus that she gave our family, to come back and explain everything and try to change my mind. And that was not foreseen. I think this is what she actually did just out of love for us, to be honest, to help us. And at some point, I realized that maybe she was even thinking about her future siblings, because at that point she might have seen those different possibilities on the other side, and might have even realized that the life of future children depended on me realizing all those insights that were lacking in my attitude at the point before dying. So I think actually everything was planned with a probability of 99%. That's my opinion at that point. I'm of this opinion that nearly everything was already decided, and there was a little gap out of nowhere, out of free will, in this little tiny moment when I had this feeling of bliss and happiness and euphoria wash over me just right before getting up and actually the accident taking place. Yeah. And I think this little time frame of euphoria might have been the only moment where I could have changed the whole setting, and maybe this accident wouldn't have happened, but it could have happened in another way or at another day. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think it was supposed to happen at some point.
Yeah, I think this is a fascinating subject, and people have very, very strong opinions one way or the other on free will versus things being predetermined. And there's really good evidence for both. And I know people, and in fact, I'm thinking of a friend right now who says, well, you can't have both. It's got to be one or the other. And I'm really of the opinion it is somewhat both.
But that's not true. Because with those 6 premonitions, with these 6 premonitions, it means to me that a lot of it was already going to happen anyway. So it was planned, but still there was a little bit of free will in it. So I would say maybe 1% of choice that was still left. And there wasn't any more freedom in this whole situation as I look at it now. And I think, to be honest, losing a child is, I think, the utmost complication in life that anyone could ever face. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a spiritual test of some sort. And a lot of people feel that if they believe in God, they feel like God has deserted them or disappointed them, or even, maybe put them in a bad place because of something like that. Mm-hmm. And I want to say that I think it's the other way around. I think, as Dr. Kubler-Ross put it, God is a great teacher, and we are all his students. And some of us just learn how to read and write, and and some of us are going to graduate soon. And some of us are writing their master's degree at the point, and some of us are busy with their PhD. And I think there's nothing higher as a test that anyone could be put through than the loss of a child. And I think this is the ultimate PhD of the University of Life, if you want to put it that way.
We'll get back to Grief to Growth in just a few seconds. Did you know that Brian is an author and a life coach? If you're grieving or know someone who is grieving, his book, Grief to Growth, is a best-selling, easy-to-read book that might help you or someone you know. People work with Brian as a life coach to break through barriers and live their best lives. You can find out more about Brian and what he offers at www.grieftogrowth.com, www.growth.com. If you'd like to support this podcast, visit www.patreon.com/grieftogrowth, www.patreon.com/GRIEF2GROWTH to make a financial contribution. And now back to Grief to Growth.
And I think it's the question of why does it happen? I think that it isn't just a coincidence. It's not just happening for no reason, but it is actually God is trusting us with the hardest problem on earth that ever could occur. And he's giving us this, I don't know how to put it. It's like, it's a bonus. He believes that we can face that situation and overcome it. So it's, I think, a bonus trust from God, in everyone who is facing this situation. And I think it's a privilege. In a way, it's hard and it's difficult, and it must at some point must even feel impossible to overcome it. But healing is possible, and overcoming the grief and overcoming the pain is possible. Mm-hmm. And I think it just means that God believes that we can do this and we can get out of it in a good and healthy way. And healing is important. And I hope to make a contribution with my book to people who are grieving for a loved one. It doesn't have to be a child, but just grieving for someone that you have lost, and try to grasp what this means for the future in your life. And I hope to make a big difference in people's lives with my book.
Yeah, I think you will. I think you definitely will. And it's as I was listening to you talk, I was thinking about a mother that I met with just a few days ago, and as parents, and my daughter passed away when she was 15. 6 years ago. The first question we always ask is, why me? Why did this happen to me?
Mm-hmm.
And am I being punished? Did I do something wrong? Did I not have enough faith? Those types of questions. And I love the way that you just completely turn that around to the other. It's more like, why not me? And we've, the way that you've taken this and you've grown from it, I think is inspiring to all of us. And hopefully parents that are listening to this will start to realize that it's not a punishment. It's not a bad thing. It's not even a random thing. It's not just, it didn't just happen. And your dreams show us that this was in the cards for you from the time, probably before you came here, that this was always going to be your path.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi there. I'm really excited to tell you about my latest ebook. It's 4 lessons that you can learn from the near-death experience without going through all the trouble of dying to learn them. I've been studying NDEs for several years now. I am completely convinced that not only are they 100% real, but that there's some very universal wisdom that we can get from the near-death experience. And I've distilled that down in this book into 4 short lessons. And I've also given you all the reasons why I believe that NDEs are absolutely real. So go to www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons to pick it up for free. www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, and something is also very important that I wanted to mention. Exactly this friend of mine that used to talk with me at the age of 12 years old, she was pregnant at the same time with her first child when I was pregnant with my third child, Aurelia. So we even had the due date in the same week. And this was shocking to me to realize that if she had been in my place, she would have died. Because when I came to the hospital after having some tests done, the midwife told me to go back home because my child would be fine. And there was nothing to worry about. And only because I had already some experience as a mother, and it was my third child, I knew instantly that nothing was as it was supposed to be. And there was no way I was leaving this room. And I told her, I'm not going to leave this room unless I have seen how my child is doing. And I want an ultrasound, and I am not going to leave without having got it. And this ultrasound was actually the reason for me to survive, because if I would have gone home, the doctors told me I would have bled to death within 2 hours. So if she would have been in my position, she would have listened to these people and gone home and died. And so I will never forget when she visited me with her pregnant belly, and I was in this ICU unit, just in intensive care. And she came to see me, and it was such a relief to see that she was trusting my feelings as a friend enough to come and see me, because other friends told me, on the phone, how can she even show up if you have just lost your own child and she has her child still alive and kicking in her belly? I said, why shouldn't she come to visit me? Because I was happy to see her and connect to her. And we'd even talked about it, that she was happy that in a way that she could still see me and talk to me, because she, of course, knew that I could have died instead of getting rescued in time. Right. And so there's a big bit of controversy about this topic and about what friends should do or not do. And in my book, I gave a lot of examples what was helpful from my friends, and also some examples of things that didn't help at all. And what I found is that anyone who visited me and told me what this loss should mean to me, every single sentence about any religious or philosophical interpretation of the loss of my child. It hurt me as if someone would stir with a knife in an open wound. And at the point then, I just had this feeling that this was too much for me. If somebody would want to define what my fate should mean to myself, it felt like overbearing. And later on, I found that the problem that I had with it was actually just because people were trying to interpret my own relation to God or to the future of my life with their own mindset. And this was just something that I couldn't accept at the moment when it happened, and also not later on. I understood that they meant well, but I wanted to be, as there's a saying, to be the captain of your fate. I just didn't want to have anyone meddle with what anything in my life should mean to me. And I definitely didn't want for them to try to decide things for me.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. And one of the things I wanted to do, we talked before I started recording there, I wanted to fill in a little bit, and I know there's some very, very personal details, so you tell as much or as little as you want. But when we talked earlier, I wasn't clear what type of accident you had that led to Aurelia, being delivered early. So as much as you want, can you fill in what the accident was? And I think it's important as to where you are today in your life. So just go ahead and fill that in, please.
The accident happened at home. When I went to bed, it was pretty late, and my husband and my little toddler, my other daughter, was already asleep, and he had forgotten to change her diaper. So I was trying to get him to, change her and just do his duty, and he was too tired to do it. So I actually just stepped in and I decided to get up and not just leave her like that. And when I was in the bathroom and had changed her diaper, I just slipped and fell onto the side of the bathtub with my belly and with my whole body. And unfortunately, the placenta was up front on the belly outside. So if the placenta would have been at the backside of my uterus, nothing much would have happened. That's what the doctors told me later on. It was just a combination of very unfortunate circumstances. And I blacked out immediately as I had hit the bathtub, and I fell down and I was unconscious for some moments. But as soon as I could, I tried to force myself to open my eyes because I heard my toddler cry, and I wanted to make sure nothing had happened to her, but I wasn't even able to get up. I had so much pain. I wasn't even able to sit up. So I had to, reach out my hand and try to touch her to calm her down. And I was talking to her, and my husband came in and trying to find out what had happened, because I had been screaming at the moment when I fell. And he took our daughter outside, but he didn't know how to get her dressed. I had told him we must go to the hospital and I need an ultrasound at once. But unfortunately, we have 4 doctors in my family. So I meant to say, our child is in life danger. We have to get to the hospital right now. Please get our toddler dressed, because she was just, in her nightgown and in her pajamas. So I told him, just get her dressed and we must go immediately and go to the clinic. And he just heard me say, I want to go to the hospital. He didn't have any idea why. I had told him that our daughter wasn't moving. But in his opinion, that didn't mean much because, sometimes babies in the belly just don't move. So he didn't make this connection to realize that we were in a life-threatening situation. And I wasn't even able to stand up. So I pulled myself up to the side of the bathtub, trying to get up, but I had to sit down. And my whole belly was absolutely hard, unnaturally hard. And the doctors told me later that this is a something that happens when the placenta is pulled away from the uterus. The uterus has an instinct reaction to try to get as hard as possible to save the child. And when my husband came back in trying to get me outside so that I would get our daughter dressed, I told him I can't do it because I'm in too much pain. I told him I just fell and, I just can't do it. I can't even stand up. And he said, I don't know which clothes to get for her and stuff like that. And I was getting angry with him. And I just told him, take the top one thing from every pile and you will get her dressed in no time. And then he asked me, can't you do that? And at that point I said, just where is she now? Don't I hear her cry? And he said, yes, she's in the bedroom. I put her down on the on our carpet, on our soft carpet in front of the bed. And I said, how could you leave a baby like a toddler at her age? How could you leave her in another room and just go and talk to me without taking her with you? She's in shock because I had been screaming. So we had this little conversation that was actually a discussion. And I told him, just get her ready and go back and get her in the car. And he felt that I was too unfriendly in my tone talking to him. So he slammed the door shut of the bathroom and he left. And I heard my daughter cry and I didn't see what had happened or if he was trying to console her or not. So I had this impression that he didn't do much to console her because she was still screaming in the other room. So I forced myself to get up and, with my both hands on my belly, because I was in a lot of pain, I was walking very, very slowly to the bedroom and trying to console my daughter. And on my way there, I heard that our front door was slammed shut. And I was thinking maybe he went outside to smoke a cigarette. But I was calling for him and he didn't respond. So I had to get my daughter ready. And when I was downstairs in the front of our house, I realized that our car was gone. I realized maybe he went out of the driveway. So I even walked with my daughter out of the driveway to check if he was still just around the corner. And there was no one there. And when I wanted to call him, I realized that my phone was on the second floor in the bedroom and I had forgotten to take it with me. So I had to get upstairs again, still bleeding heavily internally. And I think that's what was the reason why they couldn't stop the bleeding in the first place, because I had too much pressure on my body in this situation. And I couldn't really recover from it for hours until after my NDE, when I had the second emergency operation. Then that was the time when they actually stopped the bleeding and saved my life.
So I know, Alba, that, and again, people can go back to the first interview because there's so much to cover here, but you were, at that night, you were done. You were planning on leaving your husband. And one of the lessons you learned from Aurelia was forgiveness. And so you did forgive your husband, and are you still with him today?
Yes, we are still married and together. And what I learned that night was that, of course, from my point of view, I was in anger and rage. I was full of hatred when I was in this ICU. I was counting the minutes that everything had taken from the accident to my emergency operation in the hospital. And I didn't know how to ever be able to forgive what had happened. And I was blaming my husband from the bottom of my heart. I couldn't ever imagine that there would be any reason how or why I should ever be able to forgive him. And in my near-death experience, my daughter came to talk to me. And we had this long telepathic discussion where she was constantly asking me to forgive him. And I had no idea why I should do that. And I didn't see any consequences for myself or for my inner peace in the future, no matter if I would die or if I would survive. It was crucial for me to find inner peace, because otherwise, the whole time that I would have left of my life would be wasted because of these negative emotions. And talking to my child, I realized that her biggest argument in favor of my husband was that he didn't have any bad intentions. So his intentions were pure and good. He just had not realized what was going on. And that was when she told me maybe he didn't do it on purpose. So this was this sentence that really tried to turn around my attitude. And it was in my best interest to forgive him, not only in his, because it wasn't something that I was doing as a favor for him. It was something that I was actually doing to save myself. In this situation, in my near-death experience, I was in a spiritual life danger because of all these accusations, all these negative emotions against my husband. In the hour of my impending death, this meant that I would, I don't know how to say it, I would waste my life. My life would be covered in these negative emotions forever. The purpose of my life would have never been fulfilled if I wouldn't have been able to forgive him. And of course, I didn't realize that I was in life danger until in my near-death experience, I had a situation when it was actually shown to me unmistakably that my path was going to end right here, right now. If I was not able to change something so profound that it would change the course of my destiny. And this was forgiveness. I just realized it in this situation that only forgiveness has that power to change not only the present situation, but also our view of the past and our possibilities in the future. And if you ask me, I think forgiveness is the one biggest sign of freedom, being a free person and not having a ball and chain of bad emotions, of accusations or hatred or, anger against another human being, and being forced to take that with you every day of your life. This means imprisonment to me. And being able to forgive means freedom, because without forgiveness, we are always bound together with the person that we can't forgive. It's like a chain. It's like a huge chain that binds us together for the rest of our lives, up until this point where one of us can forgive the other one, or, hopefully both of them can forgive. But without forgiveness, we are imprisoned, spiritually imprisoned.
Yeah, Alba, I think such an important lesson. And, if anybody, and I think about people that have lost loved ones, and we blame the doctor, or we blame the person that sold our child drugs, or we blame, the person, the drunk driver, or whatever. We blame the other person, and we hold on to that, and we think it's a righteous anger, and we think we have the right to carry that with us. But your near-death experience shows so poignantly that it's not just not only our right, but it's holding us back. And if you could forgive your husband, and that's why I thought it was important to go into the accident and why you were so angry. If you could forgive that, then we should be able to forgive pretty much anything.
Yeah, that's something that I found looking at it later on. I said to myself, why should I not forgive small mistakes of my husband, or small events that hurt me? If I was able to forgive him for that, I shouldn't hesitate to forgive him for anything that happened later on. And something else that is important is that a lot of people who are bereaved parents, they not only blame others, very often they blame themselves, saying, maybe I should have done something different, or in this situation, I shouldn't have reacted this way, or I wasn't the perfect parent that I wished I would have been for my child before it has passed. And the blessing that my near-death experience was for me was actually
hearing it from my dying daughter that she told me she can forgive everything related to the circumstances of the accident and everything that happened before that and everything that happened later on. So I heard it from her personally, and it was such a big relief to know that she was at peace with the situation. And I think my daughter is not an exception. I think all deceased children wish for their parents to know that they have forgiven them, no matter what had happened. On the other side, they are given all explanations, all the insight that is missing here on earth, and they have understanding for us much more than we can ever imagine. And I think their biggest wish is for us to find peace with what had happened, know that they are fine, that they are well and alive in eternity. And their only wish is for us to have a good life until we meet again. And they don't doubt that we will meet again. It's for them, it's a fact. And on the other hand, blaming ourselves, knowing that we could have done things differently is okay. But blaming ourselves means actually we are repeating the hurt of the past. We are bringing it up in every single day in the present and also in the future if we are not able to forgive ourselves as we forgive others. And hearing my daughter tell me, "You are free," I didn't understand what she meant when she told me that. But later on in a book about family and family relations, I read that sentence, and it was, "You are free," and then in brackets, "from guilt." And I realized that what my daughter had tried to tell me was that I am absolutely free of guilt, even though it was actually my mistake that led up to the accident and up to the fact that she had to die because she was so severely damaged physically from how this accident happened. And I want to stress something else about forgiveness. We always think forgiveness isn't important, but thinking about the most important prayer, our Lord's Prayer, if you believe in God, then it's important to know our prayers. And in this prayer, it says, "God, forgive us the way that we forgive others." And there is a spiritual law behind it. I think that God wants to forgive us everything, but if we are not willing to forgive others, it's as if his possibilities are bound to the content of our own forgiveness. I can't explain it differently than if you just have a very small cup and your cup is empty, you can't ask for a full cup from God. You have to fill your cup of forgiveness to the brim as much as you can, with the capacities that you have in life, and try to clean your heart. I can't explain it in any different way. Actually, not forgiving yourself or not forgiving somebody else is like a stain on your clothes, a stain in your back. You don't see it. It doesn't bother you, but everybody else sees it. And you have to try to get rid of it before your time is over and your life is gone. Because after that, I don't think it's so easy. I think life on earth is the most important thing that we have because it's our preparation for the life after this life. And if we don't give our best in this life, I think it's hard to explain later on when you have a life review. It's hard to explain why we didn't do any better. So I think all of us should just try to live our life to the fullest and give it everything that we have, especially trying to find forgiveness for ourselves and for others, because this is the only way to get rid of the stains of the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Alba, we're out of time again, and I so appreciate you coming back and filling in some gaps for us and talking about the lessons of your NDE and being so generous and open with your experience. I know it's going to touch a lot of people. And the book is out now, and the book is called Proof of Eternity. It's available on Amazon in Kindle format, and by the time this comes out, it should be out in paperback also. And the author is Alba Monn. It's ALBAMONN, and that'll be in the show notes. So, Alba, as we wrap up, any last thing you want to say to the people that are listening?
Well, first of all, for all bereaved parents, our children are safe and fine. We don't have to worry about them. We just have to worry about us. And it's a blessing to have been together with our children in the first place. And I would like for everyone who is grieving for a child that has passed, just think of the good times that you had together. Try to keep up the things that your child loved. Try to give the good that you have touched with your child in your life and in a lot of other people's lives, and try to put that into the future in a way that your child is honored by it, and try to see the good of the past and continue on, because our children wait for us to do the best we can until we are united again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alba. You have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Grief to Growth. Brian hopes that you find this episode helpful and will come back for future episodes. Brian's best-selling book, Grief to Growth, Planted Not Buried, is a great resource for anyone who is coping with grief or knows someone who is. If you enjoy the podcast and would like to support it, there are 3 things you can do to help. The first is to share the podcast with someone that you think it will help. The second is to go to iTunes, rate, and review the episode. The third way you can support the podcast is by becoming a patron. Head over to www.patreon.com/grief2growth. That's patreon.com/grief, the number 2, growth, and sign up to make a small monthly donation. Patrons get access to exclusive bonus content and knowledge that you are helping to spread the message of grief to growth. For more about Brian and Grief to Growth, visit www.grief2growth.com.
Hi there. I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of the podcast, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What questions came up for you? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? I invite you to visit us at grieftogrowth.circle.so. That's grief, the number 2, growth.circle.so, to continue the conversation with me and with other listeners. It's a space to sound off, to share reactions, and to go deeper into the topics from the show. I look forward to chatting more, and I hope to see you there.